The story takes place in a world where mysterious portals known as gates have sprung up around the world, connecting the human world to alternate dimensions. Simultaneously, something has awakened within humans, granting them supernatural abilities to fight the monsters found in these gates. These humans came to be known as hunters and are ranked by letter grade from E to S. With the establishment of hunter agencies and guilds, it became a career for individuals to enter gates and slay the bosses that keep them open for profit. Our main character is named Sung Jin-woo, and rank E hunter, who is the world's weakest hunter. On a day like any other in Seoul, South Korea, suddenly a rank D tunnel appears on the construction site, and Sung Jin-woo was heading towards the tunnel. He did not like being a hunter, because he was paid very little. He was always injured and sometimes even close to death. But he was hopeless, because he needed the money to pay his mother's hospital bills. When he arrives at the construction zone, everyone begins to make fun of him, calling him the weakest hunter in the world. But not everything is so bad, because a girl named Jae arrives, a rank B healer. Apparently she was the only person who cared about Jin-woo. She was always scolding him for always being with new injuries. Then the leader Song Kai-yeol, a C-rank hunter. He was the highest rank of the hunters present, calls everyone to go to the gate. Then everyone enters in the gate. After a few minutes of entering, Jin-woo gets hurt again, so Jae starts healing him. While healing him, she asked him why he was so determined to become a hunter. Jin-woo replies that he does it for fun, hiding his true motive. The true motive was to pay his mother's hospital bills. Then Song Kai-yeol calls everyone again and begins to explain that by killing a monster they will get a magic core. The magic core can be exchanged for money. Even a magic core from a C-rank monster was worth thousands. However, since Sung Jin-woo was an E-rank hunter, C-rank monsters were impossible for him. Jin-woo thinks that after all the injuries he was only able to earn a single E-rank magical core. After walking for a few minutes they find a double lair. Song Kai-yeol uses his magic to break the entrance and tells everyone that the boss is inside, but usually if they find a double lair they need to contact their guild and wait for their orders. But if the other hunter get it first the profit would dwindle. There being 17 hunters, decides to take a vote. Then a vote begins if they wanted to enter or contact their guild. Then everyone starts voting. Jae votes no, because it was dangerous. The vote is tied, but Jin-woo was the only one left to vote. But after thinking that he has to send money to his little sister so that she can go to college, and he needs to pay his sick mother hospital bills, he votes yes. After spending several minutes walking, a mysterious door appears. Then Song Kai-yeol opens the door. When the door is opened, flames flare up and a bunch of statues appear. Some with weapons, some with instruments, a giant statue and one with a runic text, where some rules are written. First, worship the Lord. Second, praise the Lord. The third, prove your faith, and those who do not follow the commandments will never return alive. Then suddenly the doors gets closed. Then a D-rank hunter decides to leave, and goes to the door, in which Song Kai-yeol knew that something bad was going to happen, and warns the hunter to not touch the door's handle, but he ignores him and still touches the handle, in which one of the statue near the door moves and kills the hunter. Everyone panics and doesn't know what to do, because the level of the statues was much higher than that of the hunters. At that moment Jin-woo starts to think about the times he was about to die doing his job as a hunter. Everyone made fun of him. He couldn't buy weapons because the money he earned was for his family. He knew very well that deadly feeling. So he realized that the statue was going to do something bad and managed to warn everyone to take cover. The giant statue started shooting laser beams. Most of them managed to dodge the attack in time thanks to Jin-woo. But unfortunately the leader of the mission, Mr. Song Kai-yeol, didn't dodge at time, and he lost his arm. And Jae could not heal him because she was paralyzed by the fear. And Jin-woo is the one who helps the leader to stop the bleeding. Jin-woo and the leader talk about the statue's rank. Most probably it is S rank, the highest rank of all. Everyone panics because their leader was hurt, and they doesn't know what to do, in which one of the fastest hunters believes that he can escape before the statue starts to shoot his laser beam. Song Kai-yeol warns him to not move, but he don't listen him. But as soon he starts moving, the statue activates and shoots a laser beam at him. This beam pulverizes the hunter, leaving only his feet. After his death, Jin-woo finds out that the attack seems to follow the pattern of the commandments, but the other hunters do not believe him. To prove himself he decides to get up. As soon as he gets up the statue gets activated, so he quickly bows down and explains to everyone that it only attacks those above a certain height and does not attack when someone bow down low enough. The other hunters have no other choice left, so they decide to listen to him, and everyone bow down to the statue. After doing that, the statue's eyes stop glowing and return to normal. But after a few minutes some of the hunters noticed that the statue's face had changed. It was now a creepy face. After a few minutes, one of the hunters stands up and tells everyone that the statue's attacks have stopped. The other hunters believe him since a few minutes had passed and nothing had happened, and they decide to get up and believe that they have survived. Jinwoo realizes that it was still not enough. At that instant, the statue starts to come to life and begins to rise. And everyone got scared because they thought the attacks had stopped. They didn't want to face the giant statue because they had no chance against it since it was an S-rank monster. Song Kye-yeol asks Jinwoo if he had any other plan. Jinwoo says no, and the statue starts to move towards them and tries to crush them, but they manage to dodge the attack. Then Jinwoo remembers that the dungeon has its own rules. First, worship the Lord. Second, praise the Lord. Jinwoo thinks that the second rule, praise the Lord, should be the key. When they hear this, everyone is confused because they don't know how to follow the rule. One of the hunters says that he will give it a try. He was a church member and he could sing and praise the Lord. He starts to approach to the giant statue and starts praying. Jinwoo realizes that he was praying to the wrong god. The other hunters thought that it was working because the statue was moving slower. After a few seconds, the statue had arrived close to the hunter, and with a creepy expression, it begins to lift its foot above the hunter's head and crushes him. Everyone gets scared and starts to run, but one of the hunters is paralyzed by fear and cannot move. The statue crushes her as well. Sung Kye-yeol tells everyone that they should all split up for now. Jinwoo grabs Jae and they start running. Another hunter named Bak, who is going to be the father of 2 children, goes to a corner and warns the others that they will be safe in that corner. But what he did not know is that behind him there was a statue with a weapon, but when he realized it was too late and the statue cuts him in half. Jinwoo wonders how he was going to pray to that monster. Besides, they were trapped. Behind them were the guard statues and in front of them was the giant statue. And the guard statues killed you when you approached them. They had nowhere to run. Wherever they went, only death was waiting for them. After running for a while, Jinwoo comes across a strange statue. This statue was not like the others. This one had an instrument. Jinwoo wonders if the statue attacks him with the instruments. He also discovers that the guards only attack when you get too close. Once you do that, they move based on predetermined motions. If the statues holding instruments do that, then he warns the others to approach the statues with instruments. The first one to approach these statues is Mr. Song Kye-yeol. When he gets close, the statue started praying. And he tells everyone that the statues with instruments do not attack and that they all find one and approach it. Everyone started looking and almost everyone found one and approached them. Jinwoo and Jae were the last ones to find one of these statues, but when they found one and approached it, it did not activate. Jinwoo discovers that these only activate when there is only one person in them. He leaves Jae in that statue and goes in search of another statue. But as he was the only one who was not in a statue, he is chased by the giant statue. After running for a while, he sees a statue with an instrument in the distance. But when he approaches, the giant statue attacks him. Jinwoo manages to dodge the attack, but it breaks the ground, sending him to another statue with a shield. When he approaches the statue, it attacks him and hurts him seriously. With his last strength, he crawls on the ground trying to reach the statue with the instrument. Jinwoo felt that he was holding a thread that prevented him from dying, but this time it was going to break. Finally, he manages to reach the statue and he starts to pray and the giant statue leaves. Jae runs to heal Jinwoo, but when she gets closer, she sees that Jinwoo has lost his leg. She begins to heal Jinwoo, while the other hunters discuss that they started out as 17 hunters and now there were only 6 left and 2 were seriously injured. This was all Mr. Sung Kye-yeol's fault for making them enter the dungeon. While they were talking, the giant statue approaches. Everyone is scared, but it throws a giant stone. Everyone is confused to see this stone. Jinwoo tells them that this was an altar like the ones from mythologies, where they sacrifice living beings for their lord, such as cows, pigs, sheep, children, virgins, etc. And discover that this will probably be the last test. Prove your faith. One of the hunters pulls out a sword and asks Mr. Song, does this mean that they have to sacrifice someone? And with the sword he starts pointing at Mr. Song Kye-yeol and says that the one who brought them to the dungeon was him and that because of him, someone who was going to be the father of 2 children was cut in half and 10 more people were killed in that. He had said that he was going to take responsibility and now it was time to prove it. Jinwoo thinks that this was not his fault, because when the vote was taken, everyone voted yes to enter the double lair, and it was cowardly to say that it was his fault. Song Kye-yeol starts to approach the altar and when he climbs up, a flame lights up. The others wonder what was going on. Jinwoo discovers that the altar was not for a sacrifice, and tells the others to help him get to the altar. When Jinwoo and 2 more hunters go up to the altar, 3 more flames are lit. Jinwoo asks Mr. Song Kye-yeol, do you think the other hunters will save us if we stay here? Song Kye-yeol replies that today is the 1-week mark after the gate was opened, and the statues will start moving long before the reinforcements arrive. A gate opens up completely after 7 days and the monsters can come through if the gate is completely open. Raids are meant to kill the boss and close the gate before the 7-day limit. If they don't close the portal now, the giant statue would be able to come to the human world. Jinwoo tells the 2 remaining hunters to get on the altar as well. When they get on the altar, 2 more flames are lit and the altar is activated. And blue flames begin to appear, and the door that was closed at first had now opened. Everyone was shocked to see this and wondered if they could leave or if something else was going to happen. Suddenly one of the blue flames goes out and all the statues begin to activate and start approaching the altar. Another blue flame goes out and the statues get closer and closer. The confused hunters don't know what to do. Jae covers her eyes because she is afraid. Another blue flame goes out and the statues get closer and closer. A desperate hunter comes out of the altar. Now a red flame goes out and the hunter goes to the door, approaches the door and manages to escape. But everyone is surprised that the statue guarding the door did not attack her. She managed to pass through the door and was still alive, but now the door had closed a little. Jinwoo does not understand what is happening and comes to the conclusion that a blue flame disappears after a set amount of time. One of the flames that appeared based on the number of people on the altar disappeared as soon as she left the altar. The first commandment is worshipping the Lord. The second is to praise the Lord. At least the steps so far weren't riddles like the Sphinx would ask. Jinwoo thinks that the open door is a trap, a false hope. When all the red flames appeared, the door opened. While it closes just a little every time a red flame disappears. The door will definitely close when all the red flames are gone. Jinwoo thinks that this prove your faith means even in terror and danger, with sweet temptations, you keep your faith. Another hunter who was scared says he can't take it anymore, and leaves the altar, and walks out the door. The others hunters are confused when they see this. Jinwoo says don't move. We can't let any more people leave. They were cornered and the statues were getting closer and closer to the altar. Mr. Sun Kai-yeol asks Jinwoo what was going on. Jinwoo replies that all we have to do is stay and watch the statues until the blue flames disappear. The blue flames were a timer, and everyone will be able to leave once they all disappear. Another hunter tells Jinwoo that his theory might be true, but couldn't the door close completely when the blue flames are gone? He also tells him that he never believed that someone so weak could be so helpful. He always looked down on him, never expected anything from him, not even when he joined his party. Many people died when they entered this room, but those who are alive because of him. He throws down his sword and in tears tells her that he has a family and cannot die in this place. Jinwoo tells him if he leaves them they all will die. He begs her forgiveness and leaves the altar and heads for the door. Another red flame goes out, and now the door was almost closed. Mr. Sun Kai-yeol finally realized what was happening. The door won't close fully as long as there's at least one person on the altar. He tells Jinwoo and Jae that the 2 of them should leave the altar and go out the door, as you 2 have many more years left ahead. He asks Jae if she can help Jinwoo. She says yes, but suddenly her legs stop moving because she used too much mana to heal Jinwoo. Jinwoo tells Mr. Sun Kai-yeol that he should take Jae, and they should be the ones to leave, since he was injured and he couldn't carry Jae. The statues were getting closer and there was almost no time left. Jinwoo tells Jae that he had promised to buy her a dinner, so he gives her the only magic core he had, and says he will get his payment from her when he returns. Sun Kai-yeol knocks Jae out and takes her away. Jinwoo says please take care of her. The 2 leave the altar and go out the door. Jinwoo says that at least he will be the only one to die, and if he had known this was going to happen he would have taken out insurance. With his last strength he picks up a sword and says that since it has come down he will take at least one monster with him. The statues had already arrived at the altar. One of them attacks him, piercing his chest with the sword and sends him flying to the middle of the altar. Jinwoo says he doesn't want to die, quit it with all these betrayals. He had a family too and he didn't want to die either. He wasn't glad for being the only one dying here. He was lying to himself. Jinwoo says he didn't want it to die and if he only had one more chance. Then the last blue flame disappears and the altar was deactivating just when the statue was going to give him the final blow. An alarm goes off telling him, "You have completed all the necessary requirements of the secret quest." Courage of the weak. Jinwoo is confused and doesn't know what is happening, when suddenly he gets another message that he earned the right to become a player. He wonders if he accepts he would no longer have to die in that place. Jinwoo could not waste this opportunity and accepts to become a player. Then Jinwoo is teleported and the temple is blasted by the explosion. Jinwoo wakes up in the hospital and wonders if it was all a dream. Then some inspectors come in. He wonders what the inspectors want from him. The inspectors tell him that he has been sleeping for 3 days. Jinwoo asks them if Jae and Mr. Sun Kai-yeol are okay. They replied that Mr. Sun Kai-yeol's missing arm will most likely impede his work from now on, so he may retire if he chooses to. And Jae was still getting threatened due to her extreme trauma. It was uncertain if they would stay as hunters. And when the inspectors talk about Kim Sang-shik, Jinwoo tells them that it was enough. One of the inspectors tells him that the number of people that survived the double layer was 6. All thought hunters are in danger every time they hunt. It was rare for a massacre like this to occur. And when the inspectors and the White Tiger Guild reached the scene, they were all gone. In the room was only Jin Woo, lying on the altar. They didn't find anything that the survivors described. Jin Woo couldn't believe it, and the inspectors told him they couldn't believe it either. If the survivors' testimonies had differed even a little, or if some body parts of the deceased had not been found there, he would have thought of a different explanation. The inspectors believed that Jin Woo had reached the double awakening. A hunter's stats are set when they receive the awakening or power. However, some hunters awaken again after the first time. There are cases of C ranks going straight to a rank, or B ranks going straight to S rank. To check if Jin Woo had really reached the double awakening, they use a machine that detects magic power when you put your hand on it. If the deadly level monsters described by the survivors really existed, normal hunters would be useless. Only by gathering A and S ranks could the situation have been solved. But all those monsters simply disappeared. It was impossible not to suspect that Jin Woo received a double awakening since he was the only survivor left. Jin Woo put his hand on the machine and the machine started to charge. After a few seconds the machine gave the result, and that result was 10. And the inspector tells him that even the lowest rank he is at least 70. But Jin Woo power was only 10. After that both inspectors leave. Jin Woo asks himself if the inspectors could see the screen. He didn't know if it was a dream. His twisted leg was still there, and his impaled chest was still there. After a few minutes, Jin Woo's sister came in. She scolds him for being injured and for being the only one who got hurt since the others arrived alive. Jin Woo asks his sister if she could see the screen. She says no. Apparently he was the only one who could see the screen. After that his sister leaves. He gets another message with a daily quest to become stronger. Jin Woo opens the message, but seeing that he has a lot of exercises to do while he is hospitalized, he decides he will do it tomorrow. But he hadn't read that if he didn't do the quest there would be a penalty. Time runs out and Jin Woo is teleported to a desert, where a giant sand centipede with poisonous fangs appears. Then he receives another message, telling him that he was in a penalty quest, and the goal was to survive 4 hours. After 4 hours of running and hiding in the desert away from the monster, he is finally teleported back to the hospital, where he gets another message that he had already completed the penalty quest and if he wanted to collect his reward, but Jin Woo faints from exhaustion. After that day Jin Woo was doing his daily quests every day, although it was only a few days since he had woken up. The doctors allowed him to do light exercises. Because he was a hunter he healed faster than a normal person, but the nurses saw him running for several hours at a time. It had been 4 days since Jin Woo had woken up, and he had discovered certain things. First, he was the only one who could see the screen and it was not an illusion. After completing his daily quest, he would get 3 rewards to choose from. The first one status recovery, the second one stat points, the third one a random box. This time Jin Woo chooses status recovery. Jin Woo is cured of fatigue and the fatigue that was nesting all over his body disappears as if it wasn't even there. Apart from that, there are also stat points and random box items. It becomes stronger as it increases its statistics and his level. Jin Woo discovers that it is like a video game. He had status abilities, items, inventory, item storage. He was confused because he didn't know what was going on. Then he asks permission if he can leave the hospital for a day. The nurse asks him where he was going. Jin Woo responds that he had to take care of some business outside. After he is given permission he leaves the hospital and goes to a subway station to test what the key he got in the random box of the daily quest can do. From the description of the key it would allow him to open an instant dungeon anywhere. He wonders if the quest, the status window, the rewards, is because of the double awakening or perhaps a procedure towards the double awakening. If that was the case it was worth a try. He thinks that if others knew that Jin Woo, the world's weakest hunter, had achieved the double awakening, they would laugh at him. Jin Woo was confident in his ability to run. If the dungeon was too dangerous like last time, he would escape no matter what. Jin Woo uses the key that turns the entrance of the subway station into a portal. Jin Woo enters the portal and realizes that the portal had been locked from the inside, blocking only Jin Woo and allowing the other people to pass through. He realizes that this portal is connected to another dimension. Now Jin Woo could not run away if something went wrong as the exit was blocked. When he gets another alarm that he can't leave the dungeon, he can only get out by killing the boss or using a return crystal. Jin Woo thinks that a few days ago he was struggling to fight E-ranked monsters, how he was supposed to clear a dungeon by himself without a party. Inside the subway, a cold and terrifying current is flowing. Jin Woo goes into the subway station. After walking for a few minutes he feels a strong stench of a beast-like monster, when suddenly he is attacked by a wolf. Jin Woo manages to dodge the attack, but when he sees the wolf he wonders how he was going to defeat it, when 1 or 2 E-ranked goblins were already too much for him. and his leg is paralyzed by fear and his past traumas. But this time he couldn't afford to be hurt because he didn't have a healer. The wolf attacks him again, but Jinwoo manages to dodge it very fast because his body was much lighter. Jinwoo takes impulse and gives him a strong punch that sends the wolf flying. He couldn't believe the strength he had, and he wonders if it was because he had improved his stats. But the wolf gets up again and attacks him again. Jinwoo gives him another punch, but he gets up again. Since the wolf was stronger than Jinwoo, and the normal attacks didn't do much damage to the monsters. Desperate to be alone and without a healer, he tries to run away. But the wolf manages to hurt him in one of his arms. But then he remembers that magic weapons could do a lot of damage to the monstrous. So he opens his inventory and apparently he had a sword. He didn't know how that sword had arrived to his inventory. Jinwoo pulls out the sword and cuts the wolf in half. He discovers that the sword belonged to Lord Kim Sang-shik, who had left it in the double lair. That sword had cost him 3 million. It was so expensive that Jinwoo could never have afforded it. By killing the wolf, Jinwoo leveled up. But 2 more wolves appeared. But now he was not afraid of them because he had a weapon. The wolves attacked Jinwoo. He attacked back by killing one of the wolves, but the other wolf managed to catch the sword blade with its mouth. Then Jinwoo kicked it in the stomach and cut it in half. He thinks that these wolves were very weak compared to the temple statues. Jinwoo now understands how the system worked to become stronger. Every time he leveled up, each of his stats increased by 1 point. By doing his daily quests, he would get 3 stat points. Hunting monsters and leveling up was much more efficient. Not only did he increase his strength but also his agility, vitality, sense, and intelligence. Jinwoo wonders if his stats are weighted. Jinwoo approaches the wolves' bodies to see if they have released any magic core. But in these dungeons, the monsters didn't release magic cores, they released items. By killing the wolves, Jinwoo gets a rake and fang. There was also a store where Jinwoo could buy or sell items. But for now he couldn't buy because he didn't have enough level yet, but he could sell the items he found when he killed these monsters. Jinwoo sold the rake and fang for 20 gold. He didn't know how much this gold was worth in real money, but this dungeon being a ranky, he thought it couldn't be worth much. He didn't know what to do. He couldn't quit until he defeated the boss, or if he used a return crystal, he couldn't spend too much time in the dungeon because he didn't have enough food. Even if the boss was of ranky, it was too much for him alone. When suddenly a bunch of wolves appeared, but now Jinwoo was no longer afraid of dying, because he had already died once before. The wolves attacked him and Jinwoo started to count them one by one, but they kept on appearing. Jinwoo kept on defeating the wolves that appeared. Every time he killed a wolf, he leveled up. After killing all the wolves in that area and leveling up several levels, Jinwoo was exhausted from fighting the wolves. After killing all these wolves, he gets a message. He gained the title of Wolf Slayer. This title allowed him to obtain 40% more experience against beast monsters. After defeating the wolves, Jinwoo's sword was about to break. Even if he had a high-ranking sword, it will break eventually. Once Jinwoo bought a weapon that cost him more than 50,000. Hunting monsters with this weapon was much easier, but when he fought against the boss it broke too easily. That day he got 3 magic cores of ranky. He still didn't make ends meet, so he never bought a weapon again. He chose to take of them one by one using his body. After killing all the wolves he gets a reward. Jinwoo had gotten 34 wolf fangs, 2 worn daggers, traveler's clothes, and a hearthstone. He wasn't expecting to get that much. Jinwoo hesitates whether to go back with the return crystal or keep going until he defeats the boss. But he thinks he won't have another chance to get stronger and he doesn't know if this dungeon will stay there or if it will disappear, since the place was made by the system. So he keeps the return crystal in the inventory and decides to continue. Along the way he encounters more wolves, and as he kills more wolves, he will climb more levels. Jinwoo realized that it was becoming less and less difficult for him to fight these monsters. He felt stronger and stronger as his level and stats were going up. And because the monsters keep respawning unlike normal dungeon, these creatures doesn't feel like living creatures, and their attack pattern was determined. It was like a game. When killing more monsters, Jinwoo realized that their names had changed color. At first they were red, but now they were white, and he comes to the conclusion that they changed according to the monster's strength. The white color meaning weak, orange meaning it's strong, red meaning very strong. But he still didn't know if he would be able to defeat the boss with his current strength. Jinwoo comes across some stairs and decides to go down them and arrives at the boss's room, where he is attacked with a quick blow from which he barely defends himself. This blow sends him flying against the wall and breaks his sword. Then the boss appears, who was a giant snake. Jinwoo thought he had become stronger, but his name was in orange, meaning he was much stronger than Jinwoo. Jinwoo doesn't know how he's going to deal with the snake, since his sword wouldn't be able to get through those scales, and his punch wouldn't have any effect. The snake attacks Jinwoo. He dodges and attacks with his sword but doesn't do any damage. Jinwoo thinks he needs a super fast attack with some weight behind it. He also needs to break through its defense, but he has doubts about how to deal with the scales. The snake attacks him again, but this time he uses his whole body, Jinwoo manages to dodge the attack at the last moment, and he realizes that if any of these attacks hit him directly, he could die. The snake surrounds Jinwoo and attacks again. This time it manages to hurt him. Jinwoo thought he had become much stronger, but he still was lacking in how much stronger he has to get to escape from his past as the weakest hunter. Jinwoo remembers how one day he was sitting there when suddenly Mr. Song Kai-yeol arrived, asking him if he knew the rumor that he was the weakest hunter in the world. Jinwoo didn't know, but Song Kai-yeol encouraged him because it was just a rumor and told him that he should exert himself more. That name stayed with him because he was weak, and weakness isn't something to brag about. He knew he was weak, he only wanted strength. A pressuring force squeezes your head and can make you yield. Even false hypocrisy won't protect him. Whatever the opponent does, pure strength will overwhelm him and fear will make your knees collapse and toes dig into the ground. He was always being ignored because he was weak, even if he was knowledgeable or wise or received thanks in front of strength. Jinwoo was tired of being betrayed, so he had to become much stronger. The snake manages to hit Jinwoo with its tail and makes him hit a wall. But Jinwoo doesn't give up and gets up again, saying that he had to get stronger. The snake attacks him again. He dodges the attack and says that compared to the giant statue of the temple, the snake was nothing, and that he was not afraid of it at all. The snake attacks again, but this time Jinwoo dodges it and, concentrating all his strength in his fingers, manages to grab the snake by the neck. The snake crashes into the ceiling and then tries to break free from Jinwoo's attack by slamming his body against the wall. But Jinwoo was willing to kill the snake, so using all his strength, he managed to strangle the snake. At the hospital, Jinwoo's doctor arrives and asks if he has not come back yet. The nurse tells him that he has recovered and will be discharged soon. The doctor tells her we can't be secure with hunters and we should stabilize him indoors. The high-class hunters are rich, but lower-class hunters don't get much money, so it's a dangerous job. It was horrifying for the doctors to see some of the conditions of the hunters that get carried in. He wonders what they do inside the dungeons. They always come covered in blood, completely on another level from patients that get into accidents. The nurse tells him that it was impressive that they were still alive in those conditions. She wonders if it was a miracle that the hunters came out of the dungeons alive. The doctor replied that not at all. Even the weakest hunter was very strong compared to a normal human, and they themselves were monsters. After killing the boss, Jinwoo goes up 3 levels, and as a reward he got 2 items. The first item was a potion, and the second one was a dagger. After killing the boss, Jinwoo's clothes were ruined. The sword he got from his inventory was broken and his whole body hurt. But in exchange he had obtained a much better blade than Kim Sang-shik. This dagger was made from a fang and not by a bone, and this blade attack stats were more than twice than the old dagger, and it had paralysis and bleed. But the potion compared to the sword, it was awkward to use, so Jinwoo stores it for now. After storing the potion, Jinwoo gets a new alarm, telling him that he defeated the dungeon boss and the interior will revert to normal. The interior of the subway begins to return to normal, eliminating the remaining remnants of the monsters and the boss. Jinwoo leaves the subway and wonders how long he had been in the dungeon, when suddenly a soldier appears, asks him where he came from, and he hadn't heard the broadcast. Jinwoo didn't know what the soldier was doing here, but the soldier saw Jinwoo's broken blade and asked him if he was a hunter. Jinwoo said yes. The soldier apologizes and tells him that he will guide him. Jinwoo follows the soldier, and as he passes by the area he sees signs of a fight and several monster bodies. He asks him if there was an open door nearby, and if the monsters had gone outside. The soldier replies that the nearby monsters had already been defeated, but only one giant monster remained. Since Jinwoo had improved his stats, he could perceive the monster with his senses, when he suddenly sees a lightning bolt in the middle of the city. When he arrives he sees the huge monster and some hunters trying to defeat it. These hunters were having a hard time defeating the monster because the rank difference was too high. There were around 8 E-rank hunters and 1 D-rank hunter. Since their tank couldn't deal too much damage, they had 2 D-rank healers and 1 B-rank, and the B-rank healer was Jahe, but she still had traumas from the double-layer temple. Jinwoo decides to help them since Jahe was among them. Jinwoo realizes that this boss was D-rank. He had less rank than the snake he had just killed, so he prepares to throw the broken sword. The hunters didn't have much time left. They were running out of magic and couldn't heal the tank anymore. Jinwoo with all his strength throws the sword. The sword flies out and manages to hit the monster, making it collapse. The hunters believe that they have defeated the monster, but the hunter tank realizes that it was not them because their attacks before had no effect. But suddenly the monster had collapsed. He had seen something flying towards the monster and wondered if it had killed the monster. Then he came across the sword that Jinwoo had thrown. He was surprised because the attacks of 10 hunters had done nothing. But this sword that was thrown killed the monster with 1 blow, and he asked the soldier if he knew who had thrown the sword. The soldier told him that it was another hunter, but Jinwoo was no longer there. Jinwoo didn't believe that he would kill him with 1 blow. Jae wonders if that was Jinwoo. After that, Jinwoo goes back to the hospital. The next day when he was training in his room, a nurse came in. She seemed to like Jinwoo, so she asked him if he was going to be discharged today, and asked him for his number. Jinwoo thought he was going to send her the results, so he gave her his number. After this, Jinwoo went home. The next day when his sister was leaving for school, when Jinwoo came out of his room after sleeping, his sister noticed his abs and asked him if he had been exercising. Jinwoo told her a little bit. His sister said that he had grown up and his body seemed to be in shape, and wondered if men were still growing up after they turned 20. Jinwoo tells her to stop talking nonsense and take the umbrella because it's going to rain. So Jinwoo puts the umbrella in her backpack and she leaves. But Jinwoo's muscles really had grown. He didn't believe it, since he had only been exercising for a few weeks, but his body had changed a lot. And he came to the conclusion that his stats were affecting his body. Since he only increased his strength stats, his physique was changing according to his stats. He had 12 stat points left, and he didn't know whether to improve his strength, and wondered if he would become super muscular by increasing only his strength. But he realized that by doing this, his stats would not be balanced. Jinwoo decides to increase his strength by 2 points, his agility by 8 points, and his sense by 2 points. After raising his stats, Jinwoo gets a phone call and he picks it up thinking that it was from some guild. A man called Landlord called him and told him that he had to pay this month's rent. He tells him that he will transfer the money to him soon. He thinks if he is really awakened, it should be easy for him to make money quickly, and if he keeps getting stronger at this rate, he will become a high-rank hunter soon. The more experience he had, the higher his rank will be. The higher rank monsters drop more valuable magic cores. To beat a high rank monster, you need to enter through a gate of the same difficulty. There is a lot of competition for low rank gates like E rank gates or D rank gates. These gates have maces of lower rank hunters. Because of that, E rank hunters aren't accepted by the guild. And if some were, it's not easy to get a job. Since Jinwoo guild rank was E and he never had experienced a gate above D rank. This was a harsh condition. People are chosen based on competence, and back then he could not escape from the title of the world's weakest hunter. Jinwoo don't know if he should get reviewed again to raise his rank, but his awakening will become a wildfire if it's revealed. But the masses enjoyed gossip, and hunters were a good subject. He thinks that the pay might be better the more attention he gets, but malicious eyes will fall upon him. He planned to not reveal his power until he was sure. So Jinwoo starts to think how he would make money, and he thinks that it would be great if he could enter an attack force first. Then suddenly Jinwoo gets a message from a hunter, who wants him to join his guild. Jinwoo goes to the place the hunter told him to go. When he arrived, he met the hunter Dong-suk who had called him. Apparently, Jinwoo was known by some of the hunters present to be the weakest hunter in the world. Dong-suk tells them that it was enough. He called Jinwoo for filling their guild number, and Jinwoo don't have to fight since the gate was C rank, and he would get paid only for going with them. Jinwoo accepts and he signs the contract. There were 5 C rank hunters and 4 were lower than D rank. There was a rule that when entering a C rank gate, there must be 10 people or more, at least half of them must be at least C rank. Because of that, there are cases where only numbers make up the attack force. Then another D rank hunter called Jinho appears, and tells Jinwoo that they were both small fires, and they were both called under the same circumstances. Jinwoo was confused and wonders why he was wearing flash equipment and if he was a son of a millionaire. Then he asks Dong-suk what should he do. He responds him that he only had to follow them, carrying their baggage. Inside there were packed food, clothes and equipments, a first aid kit and some more things. Jinwoo asks if they were going inside without a healer. Dong-suk says it is hard to bring a healer to a personal attack force, and they always did it this way. He thinks this force was a mess, because they only had tanks and damage dealers. Jinwoo reads some of the contract rules, and sees that he had accepted that he wouldn't blame anyone else for any accidents inside the dungeon. He thinks since there was no healer, it was going to be hard. Then the other hunters call him to go inside. Jinho tells him that he didn't have to worry. He would protect him. Jinwoo thinks he was an E-rank hunter, how he was going to protect him. Jinwoo puts on the backpack and everyone starts heading for the door. Jinho asks him if he could carry that heavy baggage alone, but thanks to his strength stats, this weight was nothing for him. Jinwoo starts to get bothered because Jinho didn't stop talking. Once they arrive at the gate, some of the hunters notice that this gate was unusual and his entrance was pretty big. A hunter asks Dong-suk if this C-rank gate wasn't too big. He tells him if he was hinting that their guild was untrustworthy. He had seen people go in and out plenty of times. A gate size isn't important. The important thing is the magical energy flowing from within. The guild determines the amount and quality of the energy and gives it a rank. A large guild takes care of gates above B rank and C rank, and lower gates aren't that dangerous. This was the first time that Jinwoo was going through a C rank gate. Dong-suk was the first one going into the gate, and he says to everyone to follow him. Jin-ho starts to put on his armor. Jin-woo thinks how this D-rank hunter had a sword and a shield, when E-rank and D-rank hunters don't make enough money to afford that type of weapons. Also, the other hunters were equipped very well. They start entering the gate, but this dungeon was very dark, so one of the hunters uses his magic to create a light. Now that there was some light, they see that this dungeon wasn't normal. There were no light and no monsters in it. When dungeons normally have a couple of luminous stones. Jin-woo asks Jin-woo if dungeons without monsters existed. Jin-woo tells him to not make sound, because he was listening some rare noises and he wonders if there are no lights. It means the monsters like darkness. It's not that there are none, it's that they haven't appeared yet. Normally it was hard for monsters to live in the dark dungeons, but if they are intelligence, it means that the monsters don't depend on sight, and they move in packs, live in darkness, and when they see a light they charge towards it. Then Jin-woo realizes that the sound he was hearing was from some insect-type monsters, and warns everyone. The hunters get in guard, but the sound was from close and they didn't see any insects. Jin-woo warns that the insects were coming from above. When they looked above, they saw a lot of insects. One of the hunters uses his magic and kills some of them. Then the tank distracts them and the damage dealers starts killing the insects. Since Jin-woo went only for number filling, he only observed how the other hunters were fighting, and he was amazed because they were only C rank but their teamwork was good. And this was why they could create a force without healers. Jin-woo realizes that they had been fighting together for a long time, and Jin-woo's equipment were good, but his lack of skill and experience were canceling him out. Everyone was doing good, but Jin-woo was frustrated because he couldn't fight because he had to charge the baggage. After killing all the insects, the leader Dong-seok tells to his teammates to not exert themselves, because this dungeon could take a while, and tells everyone to take all the magic crystals, and after they will split them among 9, and gives thanks to Jin-woo for saving them before, and asks how he knew the monsters were coming from above. Since Jin-woo had used some points to upgrade his sense, he could feel more than what meets the eye. The leader tells him to not pay attention to small things that much. Jin-woo gets confused by what he said. After this, while searching the magic cores, they find out that the insects had wounds and some of them were bitten off. Their swords and their magic couldn't deal these types of injuries. The insects were fighting before the hunters had entered the dungeon. They were having a territorial feud among themselves, this meaning that there was a monster stronger than these insects. The leader started smiling maliciously. Jin-woo realized that something good was not going to happen, and asked Jin-ho if his sword and shield were expensive. Jin-ho says that his father took extra care after he heard that he was going for his first raid. Jin-woo tells him that he should be worried, because he had a bad feeling about the other hunters. A dungeon's size varies, but not according to the rank. Depending on the circumstances, there are times when it takes weeks to analyze the interior, or times when it only takes a few hours to get to the boss room. This dungeon was laid out like a maze, so there weren't many fights, but it took a while to move around. Since his job was to carry the baggage, he didn't got involved in any battles. He thought it was a good deal, he could earn money without fighting. Then suddenly, Jin-woo gets an unexpected warning telling him to be aware of lizards. He didn't know why this warning appeared, but he was sure about one thing. His bad promotions were never wrong. This was grave. It had passed a while, but they still didn't had found any monsters with limbs intact. There were only corpses and dying monsters, and there were no signs of the boss. A gate couldn't be open if there wasn't a boss inside. The leaders tells a hunter to illuminate the area. After the area got illuminated, a bunch of bodies entangled in silk appear. After walking for a while, they find the boss room. But when they entered, they find something unexpected. They had found mana crystals. This mana crystals were less valuable than the magic cores because their energy was less. But the amount of the crystals were many, so his price were higher than magic crystals. Their value was around 10 million. One of the hunters tells the leader that even his young brother would be jealous at him for having that much of crystals. Dong-seok had a younger brother who started ignoring him after he got a higher rank. He even left his country and went to America to gain more money. But after seeing this amount of mana crystals, he would take the maximum advantage of them to increase his squad manpower. 10 million divided into 10, each one of them should get 1 million. Jin-ho tells Jin-woo to give him the contract he signed earlier because he needed to check some things thoroughly. After reading the contract, he asks Dong-seok that there was nothing about dividing except for magic crystals from monsters. Something was not going well. The other hunter wanted to divide the mana crystals among 9, but it should be among 10. The leaders responds him that they will split it eventually. But when they looked above, they saw the dungeon boss, but if they defeated the boss, the gate would be closed, so they wanted to transport the mana crystals before defeating the boss. They were lucky because the boss was sleeping after his stomach was filled. This was their best chance to move the mana crystals, but they didn't brought the equipment because they didn't expect that they would found mana crystals in a C-rank dungeon. They left all the mining gear in the car. The leader tells Jinho and Jinwoo that they both should guard this place while they were going to bring the mining gear. Jinho didn't want to stay there because it was his first raid, and for Jinwoo it was his first C-rank gate. The leader tells him that it should be fine as long as they don't provoke the boss or enter to his territory, since he ate a lot, so he was going to sleep for a while. Nothing had happened since they were talking very loud for a while, so they start leaving and tells them that they will be back very soon. Jinwoo realizes that by regulation C-rank gates must be entered with at least 10 people, excepting Jinho and him the squad members were 8. He remembers that the leader said that they always did it this way, that meaning they have entered C-rank gates enough like that to tell him that they have always done it this way. They didn't needed someone to fill their empty spots. The leader orders to block the boss room's entrance. The hunter used his magic to break the entrance. The entrance started collapsing and got blocked. Then Jinwoo realized that the warning he got earlier telling him beware about the lizards was right. The other hunters were the lizards. Jinwoo recalls that long ago, while he was in a dungeon, one of the hunters with him told him that sometimes hunters were bastards in the form of lizards. Being a hunter was a pretty dangerous job. Accidents inside the dungeons were very common, meaning that even if a crime occurred, it was hard to prove, so they were commonplace as well. Since there was no CCTV that could be viewed from outside, no one could stop the hunters from committing crimes. The weaker you were, the faster you got thrown away. But if you were strong, people would seek that strength. If they felt you were useless or got in their way, they would cut you like a lizard leaving its tail to get away. They were both trapped by their guild teammates who were trying to kill them because they didn't want to split the money from the mana crystals. But they couldn't do anything before, because if they tried something, the hunters were ready to strike them down. Jinwoo finally understands what the leader meant when he said he shouldn't be paying attention to small things that much. Jinwoo throws the baggage and goes to uncover the blocked entrance. He realizes that opening the entrance wasn't the problem, but the blast had woken up the dungeon boss. After the other hunter went out of the gate, one of them asks the leader why they didn't just kill them back there. He responds that if they had fought there, the spider would have woken up and they wouldn't have been able to move the mana crystals. Jinwoo, who was the world's weakest hunter and a D-rank hunter without any raid experience, it was impossible for them to beat the dungeon boss no matter how hard they tried. He was thinking of going back to the gate after the spider boss eats them and goes back to sleep. If their plan didn't go well, they would take Jinho's equipment since his equipment was very expensive, and they didn't have the confidence that they themselves could defeat the boss. In the dungeon, the boss starts approaching. Jinho tells Jinwoo to stay behind him, and he would try to think of something. But since the boss had many eyes, a hideous mouth, enormous size, and long legs, his strength was on a whole other level. Jinwoo thinks that this wasn't true, so he tells Jinho to stay back and brings out his dagger, telling him that this monster was his. Jinho tries to stop him and tells him that he wouldn't be able to defeat him unless he was in the elite of B rank or C rank. Since Jinho was right, he tells him to find a way to escape instead. Even after reawakening, Jinwoo was still weak, but this time he didn't feel enough pressure to get down on his knees. The blue poison fangs Resaka he met in the instant dungeon was strong for a boss on the level of an E rank. He was higher than a D rank, and the golem boss was a D rank or lower since he defeated him with only one hit. But in comparison to them, this was unbelievably strong. It probably meant that he had become strong enough to not be intimidated in the face of a C-rank boss. But since his current level was 18, a C-rank boss was doable. The spider attacks. Jinwoo dodges the attack and starts hitting the spider with his blade. His attacks were working since the Resaka Fang blade was a good weapon. Jinwoo couldn't believe that he was able to deal damage to a C-rank boss. Being an E-rank hunter, the battle between the spider and Jinwoo continued. The spider started to attack him. He dodges the attacks and starts attacking back, but Jinwoo attacks weren't dealing too much damage because the spider skin was pretty thick. Even if he wanted to damage it with the dagger, he had to dig it in as deep as possible. The spider had no blind spots, and his 8 legs were very sharp. She could easily punch through the floor or rocks. Each attack was threatening, but if Jinwoo was able to take a bit of time to get close to him, he could be able to deal him some damage. Jinwoo wonders if Jinwoo was another person. He still couldn't believe that he was an E-rank hunter, but his submitted rank in the guild was definitely an E rank. But looking at his movements, he did not seem to be of that rank. He thinks Jinwoo was a false ranker. Among hunters, there are sometimes those who can change the presence of their magical power. If they want to, they can lower their rank in the evaluation. Hunters who conceal the presence of their power on purpose to get a lower rank are usually called false rankers. But the real problem was the false rankers were usually psychopaths who kill as their hobby. Jinwoo starts to hit the spider legs quickly. Jinwoo gets scared and starts to regret why he said to come to a place like this. It had passed 10 minutes since Jinwoo started fighting the spider. His stamina was slowly running out and he couldn't deal him a lot of damage as well. His actual fatigue level was 57. The higher the value of his fatigue was, the lower his speed becomes. He couldn't elongate this longer. There was only one way to win, and this way was using his dagger special ability. The dagger had two special abilities. The first, Paralyze, attacked foes have a chance to become unable to move. The second, Bleed, attacked foes lose 1% of their health every 1 second. The basic of raiding is to exploit weak points. The head was the natural weak point of living creatures. The weakest parts of the head of this monster were his eyes, but suddenly the spider mouth were filling with acid. But thanks to Jinwoo's sense, he was able to see at a time, and he dodged the acid attack. The spider was hiding his best attack, but the time was running out. Jinwoo couldn't play around a single bit against this monster. Then Jinwoo activates his sprint skill and his movement gets increased by 30%. He moved towards the spider in a second. Jinwoo was surprised. Jinwoo started to attack the spider eyes, but the dagger special abilities weren't activating because the spider resistance was too high. He wanted to finish him fast, but he couldn't get any critical hit. His fatigue was at 61. He was running out of time. Jinwoo uses his left stamina to move even more fast. Jinwoo realizes that if he continues this pace, his stamina would run out very soon. Dodging the spider attacks, Jinwoo tries to attack towards his head. But when he was close, his fatigue went to 70 and his speed skill got deactivated. The spider attacked him back, hitting him and sending him towards the ground. And after the spider tries to finish him with his sharpened legs. Before then, his last attack was about to hit Jinwoo. He remembered that he had some status recovery rewards that he got from completing the daily quests. He accepts the status recovery and all his fatigue went to 0 and his speed skill was activated again. He dodged the attack at the last time, moving at an insane speed. The spider wasn't expecting that. She didn't know where Jinwoo went, but when she realized it was too late. Aiming to his eyes, Jinwoo this time was able to do her some damage and the dagger special abilities got activated. Jinwoo started attacking every spider eye. After this, the spider died, and he got a message that he defeated the dungeon boss, and he leveled up 3 levels. Jinwoo thanks God because he didn't accepted the daily quest reward. If he did, he didn't know what would have happened. Jinwoo was surprised that he was able to take down a boss by himself, and he thinks that Jinwoo was definitely a false ranker. And scared, he asks Jinwoo if he would care to store his magic cores inside the baggage. Jinwoo was confused and wonder why he suddenly started respecting him. He guesses that it was because he was his savior. But suddenly the blocked entrance explodes and the hunters who betrayed them returns. Once they entered, they saw them both alive and the boss dead. They were confused and wondered if the spider was just big and stupid. They thought they killed them with Jinwoo equipment since it was a very expensive and of high rank. The leader thinks that Jinwoo had defeated the boss. There was no way that an E rank could be of any help, and apologies to him for underrating him. And wonders what kind of special ability his equipment had, so it might be troublesome to become his enemy. The leader had searched Jinwoo's father because he was curious about his flash equipment. He found out that his father was the chairman of the architecture's Yumyeong-han. He wanted to talk with his father, so he proposes him to kill Jinwoo and join their group. This was the only way for him to survive, and if he refused, they themselves would kill him. Nobody would know what happened inside the dungeon, and asks if Jinwoo was scared of an E-rank hunter. Jinwoo looked at Jinwoo. Jinwoo said it was okay. He was expecting to get betrayed since he was the weakest hunter, but Jinwoo wanted to fight by the side of Jinwoo. The leader didn't want to waste to kill the son of a rich family, since he could take advantage of him, so he orders to kill Jinwoo first. The hunters start approaching and the leaders asks them if they ever killed a human. Then suddenly Jinwoo gets an emergency quest, telling him that there were entities nearby who intended to murder him. He had to slay them and ensure his safety. If the quest was not completed, he would get a penalty, and then the system starts to fail. One of the hunters uses his magic to attack Jinwoo. The attack hits him and sends him flying towards the dungeon wall. The hunters tell to Jinwoo that he didn't have to worry about him anymore because he was dead, and tells him to come with them. But in the dust, Jinwoo was still alive, and he asks himself why he forgot that this place focuses on the survival of the fittest more than anywhere else. His thinking were wrong until now. The many times he entered to the dungeons, he stepped past his limit. He got healed and entered another dungeon again. He always mistook this place for a safe one. Then the system get to work again, and he gets the emergency quest again. Jinwoo understands that the system was forcing him to murder them. If he didn't, as a penalty, his heart would stop beating. Kill if you don't want to be killed. Wouldn't it be awkward if he dies? This wasn't a coincidence or goodwill. This is what the system needed. A strong son, Jinwoo. The system was not going to make Jinwoo strong, it wanted him to be strong. Jinwoo thinks that now the system message was clear. The system uses him, and he uses the system. The leader tells the hunter who attacked Jinwoo to take this more serious. He said that he put his all into the last attack, but Jinwoo was still alive. He used a lot of magical energy, but how did it turn out this way? He thinks that probably his aim was off. Jinwoo tells him that he played around with a person's life, so if he was ready to face the consequences, The other hunters were laughing at him. He tells them if they were hunters, they should be ready to become hunted. One of the hunters says that he will take care of him and starts approaching Jinwoo and tells him that he didn't understand the situation very well. Jinwoo pulls out the dagger and cuts the hunter's head. Everyone was scared. Jinwoo killed his first person, and the counter of enemies killed in the system goes up. The other hunters wonder from where he got that knife and how he was able to kill a D-rank hunter being an E-rank hunter. Jinwoo couldn't believe that he ended up killing a person, although he could said that the system ordered him. It didn't change the fact that he killed someone, but he didn't have alternative. If he don't want to be killed, he needs to become a killer. He couldn't run away anymore. After this, Jinwoo's face expression changed drastically, and he started moving towards the other hunters with a scary and assassin aura. The leader didn't know what he just did, so he tells the other hunters to not let their guards down and orders the hunter to give him one more blow. He uses his magic one more time, but this time Jinwoo dodges the attack at an insane speed and comes close to the hunter and tells him that his magic was annoying. And with a quick strike he cuts the hunter in parts. The other two hunters with him couldn't see that happening, so they attack him as well. One of them attacked him with his sword, but Jinwoo dodged again at an insane speed and striked his neck. The other attacks him. He blocks his attack and breaks his arm and cuts him in half. The remaining hunters wonders how an E-rank was moving like that. Jinwoo started attacking rapidly to the remaining hunters, and their bodies stopped responding because the dagger special abilities got activated. They didn't know how that was possible. They think that Jinwoo was stronger than the dungeon boss. Jinwoo kills the remaining hunters who were affected by the dagger. The only one left was the leader. He was scared. He killed all his guild members in a flash. Finally, he knew who killed the dungeon boss and asked Jinwoo if he was hiding his true skills. He wasn't expecting him to kill all his members. He tells him that he would show him why all the C-rank hunters weren't on the same level. And he activates his skill called Empower and says no matter how much of a monster he was, there was no way he wouldn't be tired after fighting a dungeon boss and 7 hunters. He believes that Jinwoo wouldn't be able to break his defense by swinging his dagger with an exhausted body. A hunter specializing in agility and dexterity couldn't have a skill that can pierce his Empower skill. He will be destroyed as soon as he hits him. While he was talking, Jinwoo went towards him in an instant and tells him that there was one thing that he didn't know. He slaps the leader head into the ground and says that he was always leveling up ceaselessly. The leader didn't know what happened. In an instant he just appeared on his face and slapped him into the ground. He thinks there was no way that Jinwoo was an E-rank hunter, then wonders if he was a false ranker. The leader sees his death incoming, so he begs for forgiveness and tells Jinwoo if he forgives him he will give him money and he can have all the mana crystals and the magic crystals. Jinwoo responds him that he was asking for forgiveness from someone he tried to kill 3 times. The leader tells him to stop. But Jinwoo says, as he said earlier, nobody knows what happens inside a dungeon. Before dying, the leader screams that he didn't know who his little brother was. After this, Jinwoo uses his dagger and cuts the leader head. After killing his entire guild, Jinwoo was only worried about his clothes. After this, the dungeon started closing, so both of them left. After completing his quest, he got some rewards and a new skill called Bloodlust. In Washington, USA, someone woke up from a bad dream. On the Hunter Agency, one of the inspectors who visited Jinwoo in the hospital gets interrupted while he was working by another worker. He brought him a report in which a C-rank dungeon raided with 8 people were killed in action. The only survivors were a D and E rank hunter. The inspector thought that they run away, but the worker tells him that they didn't run, they cleared the dungeon. The D rank Jinho equipment was especially high class, so it was possible that the C rank boss was defeated by him. The boss shouldn't have been much of a threat to organized parties, so it was strange that 8 hunters died. And the other hunter survivor was Jinwoo from that dungeon incident. The inspector was surprised when he listened to the name Jinwoo, but he tells him there were some suspicious parts, but it's unnecessary to worry. The magic strength measurement device used then was a super high class one that dropped from an A-rank monster. Awakenings weren't even that common, and there was no need to be suspicious of him again. The worker thinks it was a coincidence, but he couldn't let this go because one of the warriors happened to be the hunter Dong Suk. After listening to this, the inspector thinks that he can't ignore this case. Jinwoo went home after defeating all the hunters and the boss, and for celebrating, his sister ordered some chicken wings. He wanted to get drunk, but the feeling wasn't coming because of the special ability that the system gave him. Even alcohol was being purified, a reward that the system gave him as soon as he woke up after making it through the dungeon disaster. Since there was a lot to take in recently, he just overlooked it, to think that he got that as a reward. But also, thanks to that quest reward, he was able to get back his leg. Jinwoo realizes that he was immune to all poisons. He thinks if status effects are automatically healed, this item debuff will be removed. He drinks the potion. After drinking, the cure poison gets completed and the potion effect was fading. Suddenly, his sister comes in and asks him if he knew anyone called Jin-ho. After this, he goes to a cafe and he finds Jin-ho. He asks him how he was able to get his number. Jin-ho tells him he had connections in the guild. Jin-woo wasn't expecting to meet him again. He shared all the magic crystals with him, so he was able to earn some money. Also, since he kept quiet, there were no problems so far. Jin-ho responded to him that those guys tried to kill them first. They were hunters, so they couldn't die that easily. It was a fight among hunters. He thinks Jin-woo was a false ranker, a maniac who enjoyed murdering and killing. Normally, he is not a person he should ever become involved with. Jin-woo asks him why he requested to meet him. He responds he was planning to create a personal attack force. Jin-woo declines. Before even he finished his sentence, Jin-woo tells him he didn't have time to play around with a rich kid. He says that he needed to go with him 19 times more to dungeons, and he would get his share properly. Jin-woo tells him that he should know, based on the incident, hunters can not only kill monsters but humans just as easily. Raids aren't just extreme sports. Even if he was going to create an attack force, how was he right in his mind to say that, even after seeing such a terrifying scene? He guessed he wanted to become a guild master. Jin-woo begs him to at least listen to him. He wanted to receive a license to become a guild master. It was not hard for hunters to receive a guild master license. The hunter must participate in a raid at least 20 times. He already went through his first one the last time. Now he had only 19 raids left to attend. There was an examination, but if he didn't have a good brain, he wouldn't be able to inherit the company, so he had confidence in that. Jin-woo remembers that he was the Yu-Jin architecture's second son. Jin-woo becoming a guild master was actually related to his company as well. His father wanted to create a guild. Dungeons were dangerous, but proportional to that, they contained mountains of treasure. Magic crystals or mana crystals were just a few. Monster corpses were used as material as well, so there was nothing useless in dungeons. So the hunters who work at the company complete the dungeon, and the company takes the rewards. So they were planning on becoming self-sufficient. Jin-ho's father was planning to employ S-rank hunters and him as the master. His brother would be the vice master and would operate the guild under the guise of contributing. There were only 9 S-rank hunters within their country. If he was planning on employing a non-registered hunter, there was only 1 hunter left, and he wasn't sure if he retired. Even if his brother was going to become the vice master, the authority difference was too big. Friction between the two probably couldn't be avoided. Jin-ho says his brother was talented, but without being reawakened, he was strong enough for the seat of the guild master. Since he was a low rank in age and without experience, he couldn't get involved. So he was planning to gain some experience and then consult his father. Jin-ho says since he was hiding his true abilities, he wanted to go with him for safely completing the raids. He thinks Jin-woo was at least a B-rank hunter or even higher. He might be an E-rank hunter, but he dispatched a C-rank boss and several C-rank hunters without a scratch. If he raided with incompetent hunters, he could lose his life, but with Jin-woo, he was trustworthy. He seemed cruel, but he saved his life from the spider boss and from the hunters. Jin-woo asks him what he would gain by joining his guild. He showed something to Jin-woo. He was surprised when he saw it. The next day, while Jin-woo was going to do exercise, his sister followed him. He asks her why. She responds to him that he seems to be on his high horse lately, and it is not good for her to be sitting at a desk for too long. While running, Jin-woo asks her, if you suddenly won 3 billion, what would you do? She tells him that she would maybe deposit it or move to a bigger house. After this, Jin-woo starts running at a high speed, leaving his sister behind. The day before, when Jin-ho showed him what he would get if he accepted the treat, he was surprised when he saw 3 billion. Jin-ho tells him this was the building they were constructing, and they planned on using it as the guild office. The estimated price was 3 billion, but it will rise. A 3 billion one building for doing C-rank dungeon raids only 19 times. Jin-woo doesn't know if he should accept the deal, but since he was a special case even among reawakened, and since nobody had heard of a hunter that can level up and grow stronger, if he continued to level up like this, it was possible that he could reach S rank, or maybe even stronger than that. If that happens, 3 billion would be nothing. Jin-woo tells him he would accept the deal, but he had a condition. Only him and Jin-woo and no one else goes. But Jin-ho responds to him that if he was not misunderstanding, they had to clear a C-rank dungeon by themselves, but they needed at least 10 members to enter a C-rank gate. Jin-woo tells him that they will use the same method that Dong-suk used. If they offered a reward for filling up the head count, there will definitely be people lining up. If they became an attack force that came out safely 19 times, it would be helpful for him to show his skills to his father. Jin-ho accepts the condition and starts to recruit people. Back to the present, Jin-woo gets a message that his daily quest had been completed. He realized that he overdid his quest because he was lost in thought, and he left Jin-ah behind because he went too fast. Even after completing his goal, the system is still recording it. So while he was waiting for Jin-ah, he tries to fill as much as possible. After doing exercise for 20 minutes, he realizes that the counter was not going above 200. He wonders if it was the same for running. So he tries to run to complete the 20 kilometers. When his sister finally arrived, Jin-woo went for another run. In Washington, USA, the brother of Dong-suk was talking to the phone asking someone to fax him the information of the 2 survivors. His assistant asks him what he is doing at this hours of the night. He asks his assistant what happens if he killed someone in Korea. She responds to him that Korea has not yet concluded the Indian Treaty of Criminal Hunters. Since he was an American hunter, he would receive a trial in America and there probably won't be much hassle with the government due to the negotiations. He tells her that some bastards killed his brother. If he doesn't at least catch a glimpse of them, he won't be satisfied. He was an S-rank hunter called Hwang Dong-soo. He thinks his brother's 7 squad members all died and the other 2 came out alive. The survivors' ranks were D and E. His brother wasn't the type of person to put his life on the line for weak teammates. Also, they were fillers, not normal team members. He thinks that they must have set up a trap and killed him. That's why he told his brother that he can't do anything without him. He says to his assistant that he will have to visit Korea for a while and if she could clear his schedule. She responds to him, if he leaves so suddenly, the guild will become paralyzed. So he asks her when she can free some time. She responds around 2 weeks from now. He wishes that Jin-hoo and Jin-woo are still alive even after 2 weeks. Back to Korea, Jin-woo completes the goals twofold. Then the daily quest turns into a hidden quest. As a reward, he got an S-class key that could open an instant dungeon. He asks himself if the hidden quests are only given when daily quests are done in excess. This was a good chance. Since he picked the blessed random box, he was not able to obtain the cursed random box. Anyway, since he obtained a dungeon entry key, he had no choice but to go in. Jin-woo uses the key, opens a gate, and enters into it. If the key's rarity was proportional to the dungeon's difficulty, this dungeon was S rank. Since his level was low, he thinks that his survival chances were 0. But since there was no indication that the item class was equivalent to the dungeon difficulty, but an instant dungeon entered with a rarity of E was as easy as an E rank gate dungeon. Jin-woo wonders what he would do if the rarity really indicated the difficulty of the dungeon. If that happened, he has a hearthstone that he didn't use in the last instant dungeon, so if things got dangerous, he would use it right away. The only thing he could do right now was to try his best, since from now on, he had to clear C-rank dungeons with Jin-ho. He must know his current strength. Then the dungeon castle gatekeepers appears. This monster was a hellhound with 3 heads. Jin-woo thinks that if he wanted to become much stronger, he can't lose his life in a place like this. He got a key that allowed him to enter the demon castle. The rarity was S rank. If the key's item class indicates the dungeon's difficulty, then his chances of survival diminished. The best choice, he had to level up as much as he could and enter instant dungeon when he had the chance in the future. After B rank, the difficulty of the gates raised explosively. Luckily, the chance of higher ranked gates opening dropped with every level, so only a handful of S rank gates have ever opened. One of them opened on Jeju Island. After an S rank dungeon gate broke there, it became a wasteland where humans cannot live anymore. Even if S rank hunters created a team, it was unsure if they could clear an S rank gate or not. With the current state of deployable hunters, clearing an S-rank gate was near impossible. Because of that, with Jin-woo's current level, he had to abstain from entering S-rank dungeons. He couldn't compare the danger of that many S-rank monsters to anything else. Toughness that cannot be penetrated. Strength that will result in instant death. The monster starts to attack Jin-woo. He dodges the attack and with a quick blow damages him. He wonders if his attacks would work on those monsters on another level. Jin-woo starts attacking the monster with a chain of quick attacks. His Wolf Slayer title gets activated and his sprint skill as well. His movement speed was now increased by 30%, but his mana was consumed very quickly. He starts to attack the monster at an insane speed. After hitting the monster with several attacks, he gets a message. His dagger skill Bloodlust was activated. But since the monster resistance was too high, the effect gets cancelled. Jin-woo thinks that it was a good matchup looking at his skills, but his attacks weren't having any effect. Even with the title of the Wolf Slayer, the difference was too big between him and the monster. He finally realizes that this dungeon was S rank. The monster activates his skill called Wraith. This skill was going to last for 3 minutes and his stats would be doubled. The monster attacks Jin-woo. He dodges and damages his eye with the dagger. The system was telling him the gap between him and the monster. Even after hitting him in the eye, he wasn't feeling any pain. The monster counter-attacks, biting Jin-woo's arm and slapping him into the ground. Because of the bleeding, Jin-woo was losing health continuously. Because his health was below 30%, his skill Perseverance gets activated. All the damage taken would be reduced by 50%. Jin-woo thinks that even in a dire situation, the system was trying to help him as much as possible to make sure that he wouldn't die. Jin-woo tells himself that he could do it. This was different from a normal reawakening. If he became someone's avatar due to the system, all he could do is to exceed that person's expectations. Jinwoo accepts the reward condition healing that he got from the daily quests. All his wounds begin to heal. He grabs the teeth of one of the monster's heads and with astonishing force breaks the monster neck. Then jumps and he thrusts his dagger into the eye of the other head. After he rapidly strikes the remaining head with a quick attack, cracking his skull. He successfully defeated the 3 heads of the monster. After the monster death, he levels up 4 levels. Thanks to this monster, he realized his current level, and thinks if he opens the castle gate he would die. He thinks that he would return once he had become a bit stronger. As a reward for killing the monster, he gets 2 rank class items and 1 non-class. The first item was a necklace. He gets 20 points for agility and 20 points for sense. The second one was the key to open the castle door. And the last one was a fang.